Hi, and welcome to Dog Fostering 101. I'm Jackie Adams, foster mom and learning and development professional. This podcast is for anyone who's new to fostering, thinking about saying yes for the first time, or navigating those early days and looking for practical tips, because fostering changes lives at both ends of the leash. All right, quick reality check. Dogs don't automatically like every dog, just like we don't like every person. So the goal here is not instant friendship. It's calm, neutral coexistence. And most people mess this up in the first 10 seconds. Because what do we as humans naturally do when we're introducing two dogs or bringing a new foster into the home to meet the resident dog? We bring the dogs together, face to face, on leash, and hope for the best. And that's actually one of the highest pressure ways dogs can meet. Here's why. Dogs rely heavily on body language and eye contact, and in canine communication, a direct, head-on approach can be perceived as confrontational. In fact, dogs naturally prefer curved approaches and indirect greetings. It's a way of signaling, I'm not a threat. So when we force a nose-to-nose meeting, we're skipping that natural communication step. Instead, dogs do much better with what I call side swipes. Passing each other, curved movement, quick sniff, and then disengage. That's how dogs gather information without escalating tension. So, start with a parallel walk. You're both going in the same direction, a few feet apart, no pressure to interact, just leashed walking with their person. This works because movement also helps reduce tension, and it allows dogs to process each other at a safe distance instead of reacting. There's also something important happening biologically. When dogs are given space and feel safe, their stress responses stays lower. When they're forced into close proximity too quickly, stress hormones like cortisol can spike, which makes reactive behavior more likely. And one thing to keep in mind, dogs can experience what's called trigger stacking. So even if each individual thing seems kind of small, it's a new environment, it's a new dog, there's leash pressure. And by leash pressure, I mean the leash gets tight. It can make a dog feel restricted or unable to move away. A lot of those things we don't even realize we're doing, just we're a little bit nervous about the introduction, so we tighten up, and the dog senses all of that and feels that. And so before you know, it can cause the situation to escalate. So there's also things you can do to set your environment up so it's better for introductions. For example, you can remove toys, feeding the dog separately, because resource guarding is rooted in normal canine survival behavior, and even well-socialized dogs can guard high-value items when they're in a new place or an uncertain environment. And one more thing to be aware of, environment matters more than people think. Some dogs are naturally more protective of their home, their people, or even specific places like couches or doorways. So a dog seems totally fine on a walk, might feel different once another dog or a new foster puppy enters their space. That's not them being bad. That's actually normal. Dogs can show territorial or resource guarding behavior when it comes to space and access, especially in a new or uncertain environment or situation. So if you can, start introductions on neutral ground first, such as outdoors on a parallel walk, and be extra thoughtful when you transition into the homes. Also, when you transition into the home, start with full separation, different rooms. Maybe use baby gates in order to create separation if that's easier. This is especially important when you're bringing in your new foster dog, as they may still be decompressing. So what you're seeing early on and the stress that is not their true baseline, and they need that time and space to reset. So at the beginning, no direct interaction yet, and here's why this matters. Dogs experience the world primarily through scent, not sight. So before they get that early exposure to each other, they're already starting to gather information just through smell alone. And that familiarity also helps reduce uncertainty, because when a dog feels uncertain, that's when you're more likely to see tension, reactivity, or defensive behavior. But when they had time to process and think, okay, I smell the dog, nothing bad is happening, you're lowering that initial stress response. So instead of throwing them into a first impression right away, you're giving them time to adjust safely. And that sets the tone for everything that comes next. Once both dogs are calm with that setup, then you can move forward to visual exposure. This is where you can start crate and rotate. One dog in a crate with one dog loose. And your goal here is simple. Can they see each other and stay relaxed? Even better, can they ignore each other? Because in dog behavior, choosing to disengage is actually a pro-social calming signal. One thing I like to do personally during this stage is have both dogs sit and get treats. It does two things. It keeps our focus off of each other, and it teaches them that just being calm around the other dog leads to something positive. So instead of building tension, you're building a really simple association. Being around this dog equals good things happening. Now, once they're comfortable with that, you can start bringing them into the same space slowly, have them both sit, reward calm behavior. Dogs use subtle signals like looking away, softening their bodies, or turning slightly to de-escalate social tension. When you reward those behaviors, you're reinforcing their natural ability to avoid conflict instead of escalating it. When you allow more interaction, keep it short and controlled. I like to keep leashes on during this period of time so I can redirect as necessary. But keep those leashes loose, because when you tighten the leash, it can actually increase tension and frustration, which can lead to reactive behavior. And one more important piece, if you see barking, lunging, or stiffness, that's often not aggression, it's often fear, stress, or over-arousal, especially when a dog feels trapped or unable to move away. So your job is to keep both dogs under threshold where they can stay calm enough to think and respond appropriately, and de-escalate and move them apart as necessary. And as you're going through this process, pay attention to their body language. Loose, wiggly movement, soft eyes, easy disengagement, those are all good signs. But if you start to notice some stiffness, hard staring, or a dog freezing, that's your cue to pause and create more space between them. And if you feel tension starting to build, just like I said, calmly separate and reset. You're not correcting anything, you're simply preventing things from escalating. And finally, dogs will become good friends. Sometimes. Other dogs will just peacefully coexist. Both of those situations are just fine. Now, I don't always go through all of these steps we've just talked about with every single dog when I'm doing introductions. If I know my dog is friendly and that the other foster dog appears friendly and is friendly based on their past experiences, then I'll often do a simple introduction in public and move through this process more quickly. But on the flip side, if I'm bringing home, let's say, a high anxiety foster dog and they're about to meet another foster dog I've already had decompressing at home, this process can take a couple of days, or I've even done it over several weeks. Because in that situation, the priority is making sure both foster dogs feel safe, not rushing the timeline. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all situation. It's about reading the dogs in front of you and adjusting the pace accordingly. And when in doubt, slow it down. If you avoid face-to-face pressure, follow a gradual progression, and reinforce calm, neutral behavior, you're not just introducing dogs, you're helping them feel safe. And safety is what makes everything else possible. Thank you so much for joining me for this Foster Fast Track episode. Now go snuggle a pup and have a great day. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Dog Fostering 101, everything I wish I knew when I began fostering. This episode was edited by Make Your Day Richer. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to follow us and check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Now go cuddle a pup and have a great day.